So you want to open a gaming arcade, fill a room with cabinets and neon lights, charge $1 a game, and let nostalgia and quarters do the rest. Simple, right? On paper, it looks like a business built on pure margin. A machine costs money once. After that, every quarter dropped into it is almost entirely profit. No ingredients to restock, no perishable inventory, no kitchen staff. Just electricity, a building, and machines that keep earning long after they've been paid off. But that's only the beginning. The real story starts after that. That's where the economics become interesting. Here's what most people completely miss. The arcade industry that dominated the 1980s essentially collapsed by the early 1990s, gutted by the rise of home consoles, and never fully recovered as a standalone business model. Yet today, arcades are quietly experiencing a genuine resurgence, not by competing with home gaming, but by abandoning that fight entirely and selling something home consoles can't replicate. That sounds contradictory. An industry that died decades ago, coming back to life? Until you see what changed, it doesn't make sense. Once you do, it makes obvious sense. Start with what the business actually sells. A modern arcade isn't really selling games anymore. Almost nobody needs to leave their house to play a video game in 2026. Instead, the modern arcade sells a physical, social experience, something to do with friends on a Friday night that can't be replicated on a couch at home. This is exactly why the most successful modern arcades look less like the arcades of the 1980s and more like a hybrid of a bar, a social venue, and a gaming hall. This is why the business model changed so dramatically. Traditional arcades relied on a simple transaction: quarter in, game plays, quarter out. Revenue was directly tied to how many individual plays a machine could generate in a day, a model that made it brutally vulnerable to the rise of home consoles, offering unlimited play for a single upfront purchase. But here's what most people completely miss. Modern arcade bar hybrids like Dave & Buster's don't primarily make their money from the games at all. According to the company's own investor filings, a substantial share of its revenue actually comes from food and beverage sales, not the arcade floor. The games exist largely to get people through the door and keep them there longer, spending money on drinks and meals while their kids, or they themselves, chase tickets for prizes at the counter. That sounds like a completely different business than the one most people imagine. Until you see the numbers, it doesn't quite click. Once you do, the entire model makes sense. Consider the actual cost structure. A modern arcade cabinet or redemption game can cost anywhere from $3,000 to over $20,000 depending on complexity, with premium simulator or VR-based machines costing significantly more. Unlike a coffee machine or an oven, this is genuinely a one-time capital cost. Machines don't need refilling, and maintenance costs are relatively low compared to food-based businesses. This is where almost everyone gets it wrong. They assume a paid-off machine is pure profit forever after. In reality, arcade equipment depreciates both physically and technologically. A machine that felt cutting-edge 5 years ago can feel outdated overnight once a competitor installs something newer. And outdated machines earn dramatically less per hour of floor time, even though the rent for that same square footage stays exactly the same. And this changes everything, because it means the real competitive battle in this business isn't about who has the lowest operating cost. It's about who keeps reinvesting in fresh novel experiences fast enough to keep customers coming back. Rent and location matter enormously here too, arguably even more than in a coffee shop or restaurant, because arcades require significant square footage relative to their revenue per customer. A large-format entertainment venue needs space for dozens of machines, seating areas, and often a bar or kitchen, meaning lease costs on a large commercial space can consume a substantial share of revenue before a single game is played. This is exactly what killed most of the classic standalone arcades of the 1980s and 1990s, when home consoles like the original PlayStation and Nintendo 64 offered comparable graphics and unlimited play for a one-time purchase. The fundamental value proposition of paying per play collapsed. Malls across the United States, once anchored by thriving arcades, saw those spaces shrink or disappear entirely through the 1990s and 2000s as foot traffic and per play revenue declined together. On paper, the old model looked brilliant for decades. Reality caught up with it eventually, and the business had to reinvent itself or disappear completely. Consider the case of Chuck E. Cheese, which built its entire business around combining arcade games with food and family entertainment rather than competing on games alone. The company has gone through significant financial restructuring over the decades, including a notable bankruptcy filing in 2020 driven heavily by pandemic-related closures. illustrating how even a diversified entertainment and food model remains vulnerable to anything that keeps people from physically walking through the door. Compare that to the rise of barcade concepts, small independent venues combining craft beer or cocktails with a curated selection of classic and modern arcade cabinets, aimed specifically at adults rather than families. These venues often succeed with far fewer machines than a traditional arcade, because their real profit center is the bar, with the games serving as atmosphere and a reason to stay for one more round rather than the primary revenue driver. Here's an interesting industry fact most customers never consider. Redemption games, the ones where players win tickets exchanged for prizes at a counter, often generate significantly higher profit margins than traditional skill-based arcade cabinets. The prizes themselves are typically bought in enormous bulk at a tiny fraction of their perceived value, meaning the actual payout cost per game played is often far lower than the quarters, tokens, or card swipes collected to play it. Debt and financing in this industry tend to follow the scale of the venue. A small independent barcade might be financed through a modest small business loan and personal investment, while a large format entertainment venue chain typically requires significant institutional financing or franchise structures to fund the enormous upfront cost of build-out, machines, and prime real estate in high-traffic retail centers. The biggest risk in this business is technological obsolescence combined with shifting entertainment habits. Virtual reality arcades, for example, generated significant hype in the mid-2010s, but many struggled with high equipment costs and limited repeat visits, since a novel experience only stays novel for so long before customers stop returning at the same rate. The future of this industry is shifting firmly toward experience-based entertainment that can't be replicated at home, immersive VR experiences, competitive social gaming lounges, and hybrid venues blending gaming with dining, drinking, and event hosting. The pure quarter-operated arcade of the past is largely gone. What's replaced it is something closer to an entertainment destination that happens to include games. So, is owning a gaming arcade actually worth it? The owners who succeed have stopped competing with home gaming entirely, building venues around food, drinks, and social experiences that a couch and a console simply can't offer. The ones who fail are usually the ones still betting that games alone, no matter how impressive, can pull people out of their homes in an era when nearly everyone already owns a more powerful gaming system than any arcade cabinet on the floor. The next time you walk into an arcade and see kids chasing tickets while their parents order a second round of drinks at the bar, remember this: you're not looking at a business built around games anymore. You're looking at a business that had to completely reinvent what it was selling, just to survive.